Mr. Gamlin. Oh, picking up where we left off, I was telling to you how I wanted to reconnect with you and just learn about your experience, what it was like to receive the book. And I know that Tina, your wife, had shared the video in the moment of you opening the book, and I remember that. But it's been, what did you say, 4 months?
It's been about 4 months. Yeah.
4 months since
Yeah.
that. And so I was just curious, like, having lived that moment, what was that like for you to even process that? Because I realized that I've never had a conversation like this with you. I know we reconnected afterwards, but it was probably within a matter of days, so I don't even know how much of that you were even able to process, as far as the impact of people's words go. And now that it's been some time, what was that like to relive the moment? What did you expect it? Was it like, what is happening? Who is Oleg?
Well, I knew who Oleg was. I mean, gosh, we've been brothers now for years since we first connected. It's funny because it happened at a time where I've been with the pandemic and, you know, even a couple of years prior to that, my dad being ill,
Hmm.
where I wasn't traveling to speak. I wasn't getting out. I wasn't connecting. And when you get isolated like that, you sometimes start to forget the impact that you've had in people's lives. And
Mhm.
when you spend most of your time alone, like I've been doing now for about 5 years, either here in the recording studio or in the office. Now, it's not like I've been shut off from the world, but I've been virtual and not so much present in the flesh. When all of a sudden the book showed up and some of my favorite people on the planet were sharing memories of me and little moments that just, it was just me being me all these years.
Mhm.
But when I started to read how these moments have impacted their lives, even years after the moments happened, um, man, you made me cry. Really did. I
Mhm.
was so emotionally moved in a really beautiful way, not in a sad or negative way, in a really beautiful way. And it's funny, knowing we were going to have this conversation, I grabbed the book. It's right here in my recording studio. And I just opened up for the first couple pages and I went, man, it got me again. And I'm just one of these people. I'm just very emotional, hopeless, helpless, romantic person anyway. But just me being me in this world, in the most authentic, genuine version of me, and how it has impacted people's lives. It's not a me thing, it's a we thing. And I just
Mhm.
love that these people have allowed me to touch their hearts a little bit in some way. Some were people I've known for years. One was, of course, my wife, Tina. One was my
Yes.
mom, my stepmom, my favorite aunt. And then some other people that I've only met once or twice who are so generous and gracious to have said how even our simple interactions have impacted their lives. And I tell you what, I get emotional every time I open the cover of this book. Doesn't matter what page I go to.
Mhm.
I get emotional because I am very, very rich in experiences and very
Do you
touched.
guys share, do you guys express things like this with one another, like a lot of the people that contributed to the book? Because something that I'm realizing or I'm learning through creating each book after another, is every single book has its own experience. But the second part is that it seems that in a lot of the cases, people don't actively share words like that, even when they've known somebody for 5, 10, 20 years. And I just wonder, is that true for you too? I mean, obviously, you've known Tina for how many years? You've known your mom since you were born, and your aunt and everyone else. But did you have moments like that prior at any point of your life where you were able to express the different things that made each and every single one of you a gift in each other's lives?
Some people, yes. And of course,
Mhm.
being a guy, you don't just go up to
Yeah.
another guy and say, I love you, man. But, my best friend Rodney and I, God, we've been best friends for 38 years. We'll drop each other a text and say, hey, love you, brother. Love you, brother. Love you, brother. So with some people, yes. And then, even one of the people that was in the book, my buddy Dave Comley,
Mm.
he wrote in how we've only actually met face to face, I think once in the couple of years we've known each other. but he's been going through a lot in his life. So I make extra special effort to reach out to him to, how you doing, man? How's your dog Jenny doing? Because she's his angel. She literally saved his life. And what he shared was the day I met Steve, he came up to me, gave me a great big hug. He goes, and I'm not a hugger. And dang, he's tall. But him, I tell him, man, I love you, brother, because we've connected at that deeper level where you throw off all the macho BS
Mhm.
in society's rules where you don't say stuff like that. And I am much more open than I probably used to be with people.
Mhm.
And I hope they are with me as well. You know, if somebody comes up to me and says, I love you, I'm good with that. I accept it and I respect it and I return the feelings and the caring as well as I can.
Well, you have the personality that also makes that possible. At least that's what my experience has taught me is you're very open and receptive to other people, to their ideas. And I'm sure there are times I know I experience it. I know other people, pretty much everyone that I know experiences this, right? When you don't fully agree with someone else's viewpoint or agree with their ideas, but yet you're still willing to create the time and the space for them to voice that. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've sensed this in my own life when I wasn't able to voice that. I know how that felt, right? I know
Yeah.
how it felt to be shut down by the outside world, so to speak, where you can't really be who you are and what your inside world look like. So you've, ever since I've known you, you've always had that with you. You've
Yeah.
always maintained that. And the other thing that I'll say about who you are, and maybe what a lot of the people expressed in the book, is that you literally tell it as it is. I mean, anyone reading your content from the day when I first connected with you years ago to the day today, it's the delivery of it is the same, right? This is my life right now. This is what is happening. This is what I see. Therefore, this is what I'm sharing. And it's not sugar coated. It's real life experience, which only translates to a lot of these deep and meaningful connections. Hence, I'm not surprised at all by
Mm.
people choosing to share and what they shared, and how eager a lot of people were to just, I mean, instantly. You got to think about it. I don't know a lot of these people, right? I don't know your mom. I don't know your aunt. I really don't know your wife outside of a handful of messages that I sent to her. Hey, I'm putting this together for Steve. I was reaching out to complete strangers and just taking my shot and hoping that it lands with somebody. And then after a while, I just realized instantly people are like, absolutely. For Steve, anything, anytime. And I just wonder, like, did you even know that about some of these people prior to even reading their words?
A few, not
Mm-hmm.
all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because some and a lot of the people that were in there have been an important part of my life for a number of years. Others were more recent, and I was very surprised
Mm-hmm.
by even a limited amount of interaction that they would say what they say and share what they shared, and it just made me appreciate them even more. And of course, sending them messages of appreciation, it just opened up this continued. You know, I'm playing volleyball
Yeah.
with these people now with energy because they matter so much to me
Mm.
for having done that. And I appreciate what you said about me sharing an authentic version of my journey in my life. And I've been in the speaking and coaching world for almost 20 years now. Once in a while I get one of those Facebook reminders, "Hey Steve, you posted this, 16 years ago." And I look at it and I go, "What kind of guru riding a unicorn across a rainbow sky, fart and glitter wrote this?" This stuff. It was all flowery and that. And I look at what I write now, and I'm thankful those reminders are there because they remind me that I've become the most authentic version of me.
Mm.
But yeah, I just look at myself in the mirror every day and all right, where am I struggling? Okay, what sign am I getting today that it's going to be okay? Okay, I'll write about that. And
Mm.
lifting the curtain and being a more authentic version, I think is it's my favorite version of me so far.
Mm. Do you believe, so it's funny that you even mentioned this because last night I had a similar realization. Napoleon Hill, who I'm sure you're aware of, and many of the
Hmm.
people who listen to this. But there's a quote that Napoleon Hill shares in one of his either lectures or one of his books, where essentially he talks about that within every adversity, there's an equal or greater opportunity for growth or for whatever it is. And literally, I had that same message come to me yesterday. And I was thinking to myself, isn't that the truth? That there truly is, no matter how challenging or adverse the circumstances might be, there's always that seed for the complete opposite. When did that make sense to you?
Gosh, when was I aware of it and when did it finally make sense? Are probably two different
Two
dates that are a
different
few years
very
apart.
stories.
Because I used to, I'd be like, oh, wow, that's a coincidence. And then,
Yes.
God, the universe, law of attraction smacks you in the head and goes, hey, I put that there for you at that exact moment. I can tell you the most recent one was actually yesterday
Mm,
because I had this spot on my arm that's been there for a couple of years. And of course, when you check Dr. Google, you look at it and you go, might be skin cancer.
yes.
So I set an appointment 2 months ago, went yesterday. And the person came in, the practitioner, he said, well, okay, what are we looking at? I said, this spot and this spot. He looks at them both, takes all of 30 seconds. He goes, they're both absolutely normal. You have nothing to worry about. Anything else? I go, nope, I'm good. So I go out of the parking lot to my car, and right between my car and the one next to me is this little puddle. And there's a very thin sheet of ice floating in it, and it was in the shape of a heart, like a
Mm,
perfect heart,
no
not just
way.
close one eye, have a few drinks, and look at it, go, it could be a heart. It was dead on a heart. So I took a picture of it and I posted it on social media, and it took about 4 minutes. And then I looked back at it and it was almost done melting. It was gone.
Wow.
So I had to be there at that exact moment, right after getting some very good news, because I was very concerned about
Mhm.
that. I was very nervous about it. And all of a sudden I get out at the exact moment to catch this heart when it still looked like a heart and take a picture
Mm,
and not miss that sign. And that those moments are never lost on me anymore.
mhm,
I doesn't matter what people believe in. God and I, we're good. We have a good relationship. I
mhm,
always look up and I go, yeah, I caught that. And I just start laughing because, that's just how I am. And I know God's got a sense of humor. He has to. So all those moments now I'm so aware of, we're supposed to be having this conversation right now. We may
mhm,
not know why. We may know why we connected,
mhm,
but somewhere down the line, there's going to be a ripple tied to this conversation. And it doesn't even have to be you and I. It could be somebody listening to it who's suddenly going to be more aware that day of the people in their lives who've made the ripples that have impacted their lives. They're going to reach out to somebody on the exact day that they're supposed to, that person really needs them,
mm,
all because of this book.
mm. Something that you just mentioned, and I'm a huge believer in it as well. And I'll say from my experience, I am a believer of this only as of the past probably 8 to 10 years, where I really started to subscribe to the concept and theory that truly nothing happens at random. I think for most parts, everything happens for a reason, as long as I choose to give it a reason, and then there's some other time where the reason actually reveals itself through time. But I, I, I hear your story, and then I'm reminded of the stories within my own life, and it's just crazy, and it's hard to believe that it's like there's no way that was a coincidence, right? There's
Yep.
no way that it was a coincidence for you to walk out of that and between two cars at that time and see
Mm-hmm.
what you saw. I mean, anything could have been different about that moment.
Yep.
One molecule difference or whatever, right? 1 second difference and you miss it. Or you go from the other side of the car, or that car's not there, or the car drives over it. So many different possibilities, which just makes me wonder that to some degree, maybe a lot of these things are just happening and we're more aware of it, right? And then to
Mm-hmm.
the other part, I wonder, do we create a lot of the circumstances that we're in through the choices, through interactions, through the energy that we put out? I
Yep.
mean, I keep going back to your book and thinking about because I didn't read through the things that people wrote, but I remember some people like Regina, I think one that had reached out and she shared additional thoughts about who you are and just the impact you've had on her. And I'm like, man, I've never even met Steve Gamlin in my life in person. Like you said, we've only interacted a dozen times, maybe 2 dozen times in the
Yeah.
course of however many years we've known each other. And yet I just feel like I have this relationship, a connection with you that just otherwise it's wasn't possible or unexplainable. Like, how does that happen? Right?
Yeah. We're
Two
all
people
energy.
just cross paths and never
Yeah.
met each other in person, and yet they're willing to take a chance on one another and help
Yeah.
each other through the journeys that they're going through.
Yeah.
There's no way
Well,
that's a coincidence.
no, no, we're, in the Beatles, in one of their songs from 1967, All You Need Is Love, in the third verse, it says, there's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. It's easy. All you need is love. And
Mm,
when I'm intentionally putting love and good energy and positivity out into the world every day, which is my intention, I'm perfectly imperfect at it, but I do my best every day. Wherever I am, I just create positive energy. Wherever I
mm,
am, because I never know who's going to be around me and who might need that plus sign that day.
mhm.
So I just make it a rule. Trail plus signs all day long, no matter where you go. Help inspire people to laugh or smile or commit a kindness or something. And I found whenever I go out there with that intention, I meet the coolest people
Yes.
who I may never see again in a million years, but I will never forget them. And my memory is littered with
Mm,
these people in these moments, and I collect them.
mhm.
That's what I talk about on stage. That's why when people say, Steve, how do you make up those stories you share on stage? I tilt my head like a puppy and stare at them and go, really? Do you not watch the way I walk through this world? Do you not see? Come shadow me for a day
Mhm,
and see how many people's lives I get to interact with, even if we've never met or will never see each other again, and watch the energy we share.
mhm,
You do that long enough, and all of a sudden you've got a book full of people who are willing to take the time
mhm.
after being contacted by a stranger
Yeah.
to share a couple of words about their experience with another human being. And
Mhm,
that means the world to me.
mm,
It truly does. Because when I'm however many years old I'm going to be, when I stop breathing, I've got that.
mhm,
And I'm very happy that I'm living my life this way. And I'm just going to continue to do it because A, it's fun. And B, it's the way I'm meant to live this life.
mhm,
This is my favorite version of me there's ever been is happening right now.
mm. You've been through quite a journey. I mean, in the
Yeah.
years of knowing you and in the years that you shared with me prior to this, which actually it got me curious. The person that you are today, it sounds like it is for sure a drastically different version, not good or bad, just different version of Steve than the previous years. And I'm wondering who you are today and how you operate. Is that drastically different than you were back then? Like, were you always
Yeah.
kind, or were there
Yes.
times when you're like, nah, kindness is not for me, and why put out
No,
good energy? Or did you always carry that with you?
always carried that, but I was also a chronic people pleasing, yes man, pathological rescuer of damaged people.
Mhm,
And I would put a lot of other people in relationships ahead of my own priorities. And I would constantly just be picking up other people, but not honoring myself. And not just not honoring myself, but actually being self-deprecating for decades, just denying any value that I had. When people
mm,
said thank you, I'd say, why are you thanking me? I'm just a pile of garbage. And basically that's how I talked to and about myself for decades. And I learned about 12 years ago when a good friend kicked me in the butt so hard after he heard me on stage being self-deprecating. And he said, you just, I spoke for 3 days on the same stage, 3 different things each day.
mhm,
And on the third day, I was tired. I was running out of material and I just went on this self-deprecating rant and I was getting laughs. So I kept going. And he said, I just watched you destroy yourself and your credibility in front of a room full of people who loved you up until that point.
Mm.
He said, if I ever hear you talk to or about yourself like that again, A, we're no longer brothers, and B, you're not welcome on any of my stages in the future.
Mm.
He said, you have got to learn this. You're
That's a wake-up
killing
call.
yourself. It was a wake-up call. And I now I jokingly say, he put on a pair of steel-toed boots and kicked me in part of my body my doctor only gets to see once a year. That's how I refer to it. But yeah, I used to not honor myself at all. I was not good enough. I was not smart enough. I was not attractive enough. I was not talented enough. I was not anything enough. I was just not enough. But I constantly tried to make everybody else happy, even though I was
Mm.
miserable a lot of those years.
Wow.
And
What an
now
experience.
it needs to serve me. I need to find a way to honor myself while being kind, while helping others, while building my future and rebuilding my business after the pandemic years. When you own two businesses based on live events and all of that goes away, you've got to adjust. And it's been a slow process, but I'm still as passionate as ever about what I do. I've just had to figure out different ways to do it and surround myself with the right people to help guide me there.
What's the journey been like in rebuilding that? And the other thing that I'm curious is, what's the journey been like in continuing to stay course, such as being part of podcasts or whatever that are adding value but not necessarily paying the bill, so to speak, immediately, right? What has your journey been like in sitting with that in that moment and knowing that, okay, the speaking, the coaching, it's not what it used to be, and I'm having to rebuild that. Like, how do you continue to sit with that feeling, and what ultimately moves you forward or moved you
The past
forward to
5
this
years have
point?
been the toughest
Uh-huh.
ever. It's what I refer to. People say, well, Steve, how's the past few years been for you? And I say, oh, you mean 3 deaths in a pandemic? Lost my
Mm,
dad, lost my mentor, Lonnie.
I
We lost
remember.
our little dog, Super Teddy. Both my businesses got annihilated. And the self-esteem and the confidence, the momentum, everything that was going in a good direction just stopped. And this literally has been the toughest part of the past 20 years, has been the last 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I mean, I'm in better physical shape now than I've been in a long time. Zero alcohol for nearly 3 years, 26 pounds down in that time. Physically better than ever.
That's
The
awesome.
mental and the emotional part, thank you, it's been a challenge
Yeah.
because I've had to work with different people that I'd never worked with before because I had Lonnie, who was my guy, who built all my digital stuff in the background. And all of a sudden, that all ground to a halt. He passed away.
Mm,
So everything that I didn't know how to do all of a sudden had to be done again.
mm-hmm.
And when you don't know who you can trust yet, and all the money was gone,
Mm,
it's been a really very humbling experience. But again, I'm surrounded by the best people in the world. My wife, Tina, has been my rock
mm-hmm.
big time. Even when I didn't believe in myself, when I wondered, should I just go do something else? But
Mm-hmm.
there's that voice inside me saying, come on, man, you got this. You can do this. You just got to figure out another way to get there.
And that's a real
That's all.
thought. That's a real thought
Yeah.
for a lot of business owners.
Yeah, it is. And she's
Especially
never,
when you're
ever
juggling
said,
multiple startups at the same
yeah.
time. I made a
And
joke this morning. I was reflecting about a friend of mine, and I'm like, I was thinking back on my own old experience when I used to work on multiple startups at a time, and I'm like, what is better than building one? Let's build two.
mm-hmm.
Let's amplify the stress.
Oh, yeah. Why not? Just let's do it. And, I get the same thing with rebuilding the keynote speaking
Yeah.
and the coaching, one-on-one and group, relaunching a whole new group program, working on new books and all of these things. And you get overwhelmed. And some days you try to do 20 different things, but you don't do any of them to completion. And you go back to the squirrel brain and all of
Yes.
these things. What makes me very good at one phase of my business causes me to struggle in the other. So now I've got these people. I've invested in these groups and teams and organizations and people who are the back end of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the most hopeful I've been, actually the past year or so, the most hopeful I've been about all this. And now the results are starting to show.
That's
And the
awesome.
conversations I'm having are better than they were a couple of years ago when I was still kind of in the middle of all the mud.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still taking notes, even during those tough times. So much was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm more hopeful than ever and more excited than ever and having better conversations than ever and creating better content than ever, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, I found through my own experience, one of the most challenging things to go through in life, from my perspective, is that what you just described, right? Continuing to keep the foot on the pedal when literally the other things are not reflecting the progress and the efforts that you're putting out in the world. And that's where I think maybe things such as Napoleon Hill's messages really come to life more than ever. The whole concept of there's always an opportunity within every adversity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. It's just more so of a question of what is this here to teach me? What am I learning? What am I not seeing? What is it presenting in front of me? And I'm not going to say it's an easy thing to do. It takes, I don't know what it takes: patience, courage, ability to know that, okay, despite of the sandstorm that's happening outside of my window, there's still some sort of light that's available to me right in the midst of it. And that's why I've just always been curious from people who have lived longer than I have on this planet. How do people go through this? How do people experience this, especially in the field of speaking? I mean, it's look, my experience has taught me this. It's that outside of a handful of people, the phone doesn't ring as it might appear so through social media, right? Regardless
Hmm.
of who you are, what I believe, you still have to put in the work. You still have to do the outreach. You still have to build connections. You have to build allies, so other people that you can introduce and then kind of create this internal community almost. I mean, without it, it's you go from one gig to the next. And on the gigs that you are quote unquote not invited back, it has nothing to do with whether you perform poorly or well. Most of the time, it has to do with the fact that they just want someone new,
Yeah.
a fresh perspective, right? A different story. And that's what I just started to realize. And that one took me a while to accept. It's like, man, I did so well here. Why am I not invited again? And I literally asked the person the same question one day, and she said, we just need a new speaker,
Yeah.
just a new voice. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. I used to deal with that with my DJ business. I owned a DJ
Yeah.
company for 28 and a half years. And there were certain venues that there was 2, 3, or 4 venues that I played at more than 125 times each
Hmm.
because they kept referring me and referring us, my agent, referring us, referring us, referring us. And we just cruised at a certain number of events every year because of those. And then all of a sudden, about maybe 12 years ago, these venues started to get rid of these people who are in charge,
Mm-hmm.
the managers, get rid of those, put in some young, inexperienced people
Mm-hmm.
who were not interested in building relationships. And all of a sudden, all those venues just went away. They stopped
Mm.
referring us. And all of that business, despite years of effort in building relationships, disappeared. And
Wow.
it can be tough. It's an ego hit because every time you would walk in, people would go, "Oh, thank God it's you. You should have seen the guy that was here last week." And would talk about somebody who was very unprofessional or was rude or whatever, or didn't even show up. It's tough when you're out there giving your best and doing your best. And I'm the same exact way. When I'm on stage, I always want to be the best they've ever had as far as engagement and people actually walking away with something.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they never call you back and you wonder, did I really do that good of a job? And like you said,
Yeah.
they just said, oh no, we just wanted somebody new.
Yeah. Well, that's the challenge. That's the challenge
Yeah.
of being in the speaking business
Yeah.
is the and it to some degree, if you think about it from a event organizer perspective, right? Would you want to have the same person telling the same exact message every
Mm.
single time? Probably not, right? Especially if it's the same audience. Now,
Right.
if the person chose to evolve that message and turn it into something different with a completely different takeaway, then maybe. But in most situations, when you think about how public speaking is done, at least through my lens, it's you develop one quote unquote signature keynote and you go with that from one place to the next. Well, how many times do you want to watch the same movie, right?
Mm.
Even from our perspective. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, there are a handful of movies that I've seen 3 or 4 times. Would I want to see them 10 to 20 times in my life? Probably not, right? In
There's some
Shawshank
movies I've
Redemption, I've
seen
seen that
60
probably
times.
like 3, 4. I don't know if I want to watch it the 7th time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Tina always says, she goes, "Oh my gosh, I walk in to our bedroom at night, and Steve's already half asleep, and there's a movie he's seen 60 times." I said, "That's exactly why I still watch it, because it's so familiar, it's comfortable."
Yeah.
But I do know what you mean, yeah. You know, and the funny part of it is I'm always evolving and changing, not so much the framework of what I talk about, but the
Mhm.
stories and the experiences and how I've grown since the previous time I may have been with them. I've got one company that next January will be the 17th year in a row they've hired me to teach vision boards and visualization to their
Wow.
teams. Now, the basics of it are the same each year. Obviously, the mechanics of visualization, they don't change. And I asked her one time, you have the videos of me from all 16 years. Why do you bring me back? And she said, there's nothing like having Steve Gamlin in the room. And
Mm.
every year you bring something new and you bring good energy. She goes, and that's why we bring you back every year.
Mhm. That's an experience worth remembering for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's direct feedback about who you are and how you show up to other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So I work really hard every year to make, even if it's just the first 5 minutes,
Mm.
such an amazing experience to show that I've evolved in how I present,
Mhm.
in the way I deliver, to get that hook in there and get them so excited about what they're about to learn, even if it's the same basic steps, bringing in something new. And this happens with conversations we have every day with people.
Mhm.
Keep evolving
Mhm.
as a person, keep getting better at being you and creating the
Mhm.
ultimate version of yourself. Because in this whole thing called life, it's not just what you get, this is my opinion, not just what you get, but it's who you become in the process.
Yes.
And I'm a much better, happier, more adjusted, focused, kind person than I was even a year ago because I just keep doing the basics over and over again. Keep having
Mhm.
conversations, keep meeting people, keep developing new ways to experience life on this path.
Speaking of evolution, where can people find you? Because I know a lot of your websites and everything has evolved into, slightly different versions of it.
Mhm.
What are those channels right now?
Nice and easy. My website is stevegamlin.com, which is Gamlin.
Mhm.
And of course, you can find me on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram and YouTube. And you can find me at all those places just by looking up my name.
Mm. Steve, it's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for being you in all seriousness. You've made a big impact in my life and continue to, and so every time we reconnect, it feels like no time has passed, even though it has. And
Yeah,
sometimes a substantial amount of time passes before we do, but every time this happens, it always feels like you're just having a conversation with a friend. That's it.
yeah, absolutely. And I always look forward to our conversations because we're supposed to be talking right now. Just like every other conversation we've ever had, we were supposed to
Hmm.
be connected at that moment. This is the heart-shaped piece of ice floating in the puddle at this exact moment we're supposed to be having this conversation. And I appreciate you and I love you for that because you're like my kid brother. That's how I feel about our relationship.